Good morning. I don't know about you, but dark mornings, cold weather, it's really hard to get motivated. But today we have something to celebrate. We're going to learn about the IT sector, which is the fastest growing industry in Canada. This is the fourth of six series on how to transition into new careers. And so I am so happy that you've joined us. I hope that you've got a warm drink with you and you'll be able to stay with us for the next hour and a half or so. So the IT sector, it's rapidly expanding, and it's earned Canada the title of fastest growing IT job market in the world, beating out Bay Area, Silicon Valley. That's good news for us. Technology job growth is outpacing the rest of the economy 4-1. And the employment level in ICT professions have increased by what is 11% year over year. That's pretty impressive, 11% increase year over year in terms of positions. The study by Randstad resulted in us knowing that this is an area that might be of great interest for you to start a new career or to think about change. And as we know, every sector has jobs similar. So they all need finance, they all need marketing. So it's not just the programmers that we're talking about. Now, I just wanted to give you a couple of resources before we start. If you go to calgaryupskill.ca, they have done a study which matches skills from different occupations and to new occupations. So it's a way for you to look at, I have these skills, what other occupations might I be suited for? So I would suggest that that might be one place for you to look if you're looking to transition. So to begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Without the Government of Alberta and the Government of Canada, this would not be possible. They provide programs and services for job seekers. So if you're interested, seek out the employment directory for the Alberta government, and you can find out where you can get help in Calgary. We can't see or hear you, and so the only way for you to connect with us is through the question box. So if you have a question or want certain information, type that in, and that information will get to us, and we will try to address it during this workshop. If we run out of time or we have too many questions, I'm going to apologize. Although in the past, questions have been a little slow coming in. So please feel free to type in your questions because there is no silly question. Now, we do have a prize for a $50 gift certificate. And so I will be giving you the answer to the question at some point during the workshop. And then at the end of this seminar, there will be a question come up, a poll, and we'll ask you to put in the answer, put in your name, and put in your email. Melinda was the winner last week, no, not last week, because it's been 2 weeks since we met. The bios for all of our speakers played prior to this, and it will play again at the end. So if you need information about the speakers, that's where you'll find it. Now, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speakers today. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about what they do outside of their jobs also, as a way for us to understand balance is important in our life, and being involved in community is a great way to do that. So the first speaker I would like to introduce is Nathan. And Nathan's favorite part of working with ETB is helping their team solve tricky problems and building solid and innovative products. Balance in life is important, and Nathan is an outdoor enthusiast. Photography is his hobby, especially capturing some of the beautiful landscapes around Calgary. He has recently learned how to fly fish, and keeping with his love of water, he would like to go diving in Bali one day. If anyone has an undeveloped piece of land in the foothills, Nathan would love to build an off-grid cabin. So you can let us know if you've got something available. Thank you, Nathan, for being here today. Now, our next speaker, reading Scott's bio, I'm not sure if he ever sleeps. He is a true entrepreneur in every sense of the word. Scott has successfully transitioned through many career changes, beginning as an EMT, then moving into the IT world. He joined an early stage software company as a programmer and later became a chief operating officer. Prior to us meeting here, Scott was saying programming was not his highest skill level, but obviously communication and leadership is where he's really shining. He took a lead role in commercializing the product to successful market entry on a national scale. Now, I found him on a website that was new to me called nicer.org, where you can get expert advice to grow and start your venture. And this website, they have a little fee, and Scott is chosen for the fee to go to the Canadian Cancer Society. So not only is he an entrepreneur, but he's also very community minded, and he coaches hockey and football in his spare time. Welcome, Scott. Very pleased to have you participate. Now, our last speaker, in an article I read about Dom, she said embracing diversity is about being comfortable in being uncomfortable. I really love that. Innovation thrives in diverse groups. So if you want to innovate, you already know that you need to be uncomfortable. So you need to be, so you're predisposed, honestly, to enabling diversity. Therefore, the best way for innovation is for diversity, getting out of the organization silo. And I think this is a really good thing for our job seekers to hear if they're looking to change careers. Dom has also just completed a 3-year commitment as a director on the Women's in Need Society Board, where she provided strategic direction for and oversight of the organization that helps vulnerable women and their families live a better life. The 4 family resource centers are funded through retail offerings under the WINS banner. Welcome, Dominique. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. I am so looking forward to our discussion today. So maybe we can start by having each of you just tell us a little bit about what you do for work and how you got into your field. So perhaps we could start with Scott.
Sure. Thanks, Lynn. Hi, everybody. Good to chat, if not virtually for now. So I have a bit of a windy curve in my career over the years. Lack of planning actually worked out in this case. So we'll see where the next few years end up. But I started off in emergency services, not really knowing where I wanted to land, but I always had some interest in that for some weird reason. So I did that for about 6 years. Loved what I was doing. Loved the people that I'm working with and the job that I was doing, but looking 15 years in the future, I knew it's not where I wanted to be or needed to be. And so this is when the IT sector was just coming of age in the early days. And I kept, it sounds ridiculous now, but I kept seeing all these domain names of the www dot stuff. And I'm like, hey, that might be interesting. It seems like that's where a lot of things are going. So I left my full-time job and went back and did a computer science degree. And I remember walking into where I was going the very first day at DeVry, which I don't even think exists here in Canada anymore, thinking, what am I getting myself into? Am I even smart enough to do something like this? Because I know absolutely nothing about it. And so ended up working out okay. And out of that degree program, then I entered my first startup, which was as Lynn had mentioned on the introduction, is I knew I was a terrible programmer. That made no bones about that, but really went on the offensive to figure out where I wanted to land and what kind of things I wanted to be doing with the skill sets that I had. And so I've been able to make a career out of that over the last 20 years in the technology space, not by waiting for things to happen, but by going and making things happen the way that I want them to. And so even in today's, job situation with the uncertainty with oil and gas and the different sectors, and in my opinion, everything's a global economy now. So there's an abundance of opportunities out there in so many different ways, and it's really about being on that offensive to figure out where it is that you want to go. So over the years, I've done just that. So I've been involved I'm now in my 6th startup company. We've had some exits, we've had some losers. And outside of the what we do now, which is a global, software as a service business that we built from nothing, I also do some work with the entrepreneurial community in Calgary, and have been fortunate enough early on to have some people extend their hand to me and say, hey, how can we help out? And as we've had a little bit of success on our way, then it's been important to me to reach back out and see how I can offer that same to other people that are coming up through the ranks. And so I work as an entrepreneur in residence for a couple of accelerators. I run a CEO roundtable group of early stage technology CEOs, helping them go from nothing to get to sustainable revenue and actually build a company. And I've worked with hundreds of companies in advisory capacity doing different things and helping them get from what they know and understood into this crazy world of entrepreneurship about all the things that they need to automatically become experts in when they start a startup, which obviously we all know that's not the case. So kind of a bit of a roundabout case of how I've got to where I'm at, but it's been a lot of fun, not easy. And I like Dom's idea about getting uncomfortable, because if I sit still for more than a half a day, then I start to get a little wacky. So there's always something that goes on. So I love that terminology because it's really important, and I live by that. So that's a bit of an introduction, and happy to engage in some questions as we go along.
Thank you. Dom, do you mind sharing a bit of your background with us?
Absolutely. So I think I'm going to echo Scott a little bit and say, first of all, I also have quite a windy path to get to where I am. In the early when I was doing my degree, at that time, someone said, analytics is going to be a thing. I think companies are going to start caring maybe about all this data they've been hoarding. And so when I graduated, I came out with a little bit of more of an analytics bent to my business degree. And absolutely hiring for that. Absolutely no one. I was way ahead of that curve. And so I went into the one area that actually was really interested in large scale analytics. And Scott, you're going to laugh because it's looking like we have a very suck of life here. I went into epidemiology with Alberta Health. So did quite a lot of work with that group. I wasn't working with them directly. I was a consultant there. And then went a little bit more into policy, and then jumped into the most obviously related area after you've worked in population and public health. I went straight into oil and gas consulting. So that transition of I took a leap of faith, and someone else, in that case, my employer, which was a consulting company, decided to take that leap of faith with me. And I think that's when we talk about changing our jobs, when we talk about changing our roles, a lot of that is, it's like, my goodness, is the little engine that could, is that still a thing? I think I can. So until you're basically moving under your own steam, if you will. So you go and you take someone else on the journey with you. And so the gas companies, their corporate and then made another leap of faith, which was also very obvious and very kind of analogous. I jumped straight into technology. So I'm currently in the pre-sales organization of SAP, which is probably the largest company you've not heard of. And it runs quite a number of the back end enterprise resource planning systems of many of actually your clients, your employers, the universities, the province of Alberta right now, actually. And it also deals with all the procurement and the finance pieces, the HR pieces, all of that good stuff. And as part of the pre-sales organization, I actually help make our clients a little bit uncomfortable. So I help them think about, okay, there's a lot of transformation that needs to happen. We have some legacy systems, we have some modern systems. What does the future look like for us? And then how are we supposed to transition? And what's the value of that transition for us? So it's really helping them think through their strategy all the way down to kind of the value and the execution that they're going to need to walk.
Nathan, thank you very much, Dom.
Yeah, thanks for those intros. Great to chat with everyone today. My name is Nathan Gutzman. I work at a company called Energy Toolbase. My kind of career path is a little bit more linear, I would say, than perhaps our other my colleagues on this panel here. I graduated from the University of Calgary with an electrical engineering degree. I went and worked at a company that some of you might be familiar with in the oil and gas field, Pason Systems. And I worked there for about 7 years. And within kind of the last couple of years, Pason Systems created an internal startup to start to look at other industries besides oil and gas. And that internal startup eventually turned into where I work now, Energy Toolbase. And what we're primarily concerned with is using software, providing software to the renewable energy industry. So we do modeling of renewable projects. We do control systems for energy storage systems, like the Tesla Powerwall and those kinds of big batteries. And we do monitoring of those kinds of Internet of Things devices. So I work as an engineering manager with that company. I also used to be a software developer like Scott. And it's been an interesting transition out of oil and gas and out of software development into renewables, technology, and management. So that's a little bit of my story.
Thank you. Well, I certainly think that talking about IT, it's everywhere, and we know that it's a field that is growing. And so I guess I'm curious, what kind of transferable skills do you think would be an asset for this industry? So anyone jump in. If I'm at home and I previously say been in oil and gas, what would my history bring, because you've all had previous employment? What kind of things should I be sharing with a future employer?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. And I really liked what you said there, Scott, about the economy becoming more and more global all the time. And I think that kind of plays into something that I look for when I'm growing the team at Energy Toolbase. The fact that my colleagues in the company are distributed around the world. And so communication skills are really the first thing we look for when we're looking to hire someone that's to fill a position, whether that's verbal communication, written communication. They're all really important. And I think that we've especially seen that in this most recent year with many people starting to work even more remotely than they had before. And so those kinds of skills, and then of course, problem-solving skills.
Mm-hmm.
Problem solving is a really transferable skill, and whether you're doing that with a group or individually, I think that those kinds of thought patterns and processes are very important to any position.
Thank
And
you.
I'll jump in next here. Is some of the transferable skills, and I'll take the perspective of kind of earlier stage tech companies, because that's where I have lived for the last number of years. And when I say early stage, I kind of talk about $0 to $10 million. And I know in the oil and gas, that's they'll make that before coffee in the morning, but that's not the reality of where we are at. So when we look at different skill sets we're looking to bring in, titles and positions mean zero to us, because sitting in a large organization, having a title and working up through the ranks, though completely respectable in what you're doing or you may be doing, and meaningful for the career path there, on an early stage company, it doesn't mean anything. So we recently hired 10 developers in the last 45 days because of some projects that we're working on. And so when we were going through the early process to look and to see what kind of people we wanted to bring on, their resumes probably made up 10% of what we were actually looking for on the paper side of things. And kind of how we defaulted that is, if they didn't have a personal website that could showcase some of the work that they wanted, that's what we look for. What the list of we saw 1 page to 17 page CVs that came in on there. And we didn't hire the 17 pager, by the way. But it's really about in our world, what do we need? And it's not one specific skill. It's somebody who can come in, be very dynamic, and grow with the organization. And so the folks on the call here today, whether you've got 3 or 5 years or 20 years in your career, there's a huge amount of transferable skills that you have. But I think you might have to get uncomfortable about what you might be expecting to do, because in the early stage world, it can change from day to day, hour to hour, let alone what's going to happen over the span of a year or something like that. So another thing that we looked at when we were bringing and onboarding people is, what do they know about our company, not necessarily our industry, because we might be a bit specific for some, but did they take some time to really look and understand about our company?
Mm.
Now, developers are a bit different, and Nathan might be able to attest to this, is if they're pure technology people, they are just in a different world, and they don't even consider those things, right? It's just not something that's even in their wheelhouse of things to look at. But for the accounting people, the business development people, senior level project management, those kind of things, you need to understand who you're going to talk to. Because if you come in and again, this is my opinion, if you come in and talk about all the great things you did in a big corporate environment, that's a turnoff to me, because I want to know what you've done. Like Nathan did in his organization, started a startup and spun it off, and now it has something. Those kind of things in the story that you tell is really what's going to get some interest and get engagement about what's going on. Not titles, not long CVs, but it's really about how in tune you are to what we think we actually need, and where you can bring some value and fill some gaps.
So may I just ask a question about that, Scott? First, when you say what you've done, if I've worked for a large corporation and I haven't had a chance to work with a startup, what kind of things can I actually do, or are there courses I can take that would show you that I am serious about getting into this whole new area?
Yeah, I don't know about specific courses, because the world of early stage is a bit of it's a bit of a mess. It's completely fragmented, and I'm not sure. There probably are some programs, I just don't know about them.
Mhm.
But when I say to the kind of things that you need to speak to, like project management in any business is a big thing. Change management, people management. I think it doesn't matter what business we're in, we're all in the people business. So if you can translate some of those skills to how you can deal with people, how you can deal with small groups, how you can deal with adversity, how you can deal with ambiguity and new things get thrown at your way, and how you embrace them, or I have other people for that. That's just not going to work in this world. And so being able to be very flexible, and some of the big challenges I see in earlier stage companies, they really have a lack of clarity of how to generate money, how to generate revenue. And so that's one of the big issues that we deal with is, can you transfer some of your skills from your former corporate environment into how business models work, and how do they become sustainable over time? So I think with an experienced person, they could bring tremendous value to the earlier stage companies. It's not going to come with a big paycheck. And I think you need to be flexible in how you might get paid, whether it's consulting or reduced wage, it's some equity, or there's all sorts of options there, but it's just very different. So I think you have to be a little bit different in how you approach it, and how you might engage with the company that you're talking to, because the ones that are growing, they need help in all sorts of ways. I mean, even with the product launch that we're doing right now, we have a whole bunch of developers that are working on that, and we're looking to backfill some marketing and sales opportunities, because now we have to do a massive push in the next 12 months to be able to get to market the way that we want. So we have a plan, but we just lack the people who have done those kind of things before. So there are opportunities out there. There's no question. It's just a matter of engaging with them in a way that's meaningful for them, and then being adaptable on your side.
Thank you for those very practical kind of tips. Thank you. Dom, any input? Oh, there we go.
Sorry, I dropped for a second there. Yeah. Living the bingo. So I take it that the question around to me.
Yes, please.
Okay, wonderful. So I think one of the things, building a little bit on what Scott was saying, is we can't forget that when we work in these large corporations, or if you have worked in large corporate for, one of the great things you bring is business acumen. Whenever it is that you're, having to develop a new project or build a case for change or communicate it to executive leadership, that's actually preparing you for a sales type of role as well. A sales organization within this technology, broader technology company. I don't get to do any coding. I don't implement anything that we do. What I'm really responsible for is supporting the business case, if you will, of our clients who are looking to undertake this transformation. So I think that business acumen, that ability to influence without authority, to bring together disparate groups of people to come up with a coherent vision, I think that's incredibly powerful, and something that we should never have from working in these larger environments. And that's above and beyond even just having that industry knowledge. At the end of the day, each of us here on this call are selling into some of these oil and gas clients. And so the understanding of the industry and being able to speak to it, like if, for example, if you're an accountant right now, or if you're in engineering right now, that means that if you're an accountant, I can put you in front of the accounting department of an oil and gas company, speak to their challenges that they have with, for example, JVAs and things like that. If you are an engineer, I can put you in front of the operator, and I know that you'll be able to speak in a really credible manner. So, never discount that component, even though you're shifting to a different context.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have our first question. This is for Scott to begin with. As you know, being an employee and being an entrepreneur has both their own advantages and disadvantages. From your point of view at this global world, which is better, working as an IT employee or as an IT entrepreneur? Any advice?
I mean, both create opportunities, both create challenges. I think one of the practical things that I always try and instill in people if they're looking at, becoming into an entrepreneur or whatever you might call it, starting a company, is you have to be realistic about what your runway looks like from a personal perspective, and how much, cash, how much flexibility do you have if you have family commitments, do you have, mortgages, all these kind of things as well, because it often takes way longer than people think to go from nothing or the idea to get some revenue. Now, I think a lot of people, it takes them longer than it should, but that's just the kind of the metrics that are out there. So it really depends on what you want, your personality, your risk tolerance for different things. I think if you want to take a turn into the entrepreneurship world, there's a tremendous amount of help that's out there, especially in the local Calgary community, through Startup Calgary and platform and stuff. And the things that, we had to learn 15 years ago, you can now, get on some programming with them, and, in 8 weeks, you can, be years ahead of time. So it really depends on where you're at personally, but I think it's something everyone should give a go and see how they like it or not. I mean, jobs are not going to be easy in Calgary to find in a lot of ways, the way they were over the last 10 years. So as long as you're thoughtful about it, and one of the things that I always is when I deal with early stage companies is you must have a path to revenue. You can't build and think we have a great idea. And, even looking at the oil and gas industry, it takes a long time to get in there. They're massive, and it's not going to happen in a month. And so how long do you have before you run out of revenue or before you run out of resources to do what you're doing? So there has to be, multiple strategies on that. But the real thing is your path to revenue. And if you're more comfortable with a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month, and you just can't wrap your head around it, that's completely fine. If it's something that you want to give as a go in the IT world, there are literally a million ways to make $1 million in IT globally right now. And there's just opportunity everywhere if you know how to filter out some of the junk that's out there. But there's so many opportunities, and it doesn't have to be a long time to make some kind of substantial or meaningful compensation or income, which is ever important to you. It's not just about the money. I mean, it could be the social good. There's a whole host of other things as well. But there's ways to do it that can get it there quicker than not. But I would encourage everyone to, even as a side hustle, look into something, find some resources, and see if it's something that you can generate something meaningful for you, whatever that might be.
Thank you. Another question we've received is really around resumes and thinking about how should people present their information. So previously we did we used to do resumes where we'd list our company, our roles, and that type of thing. Do you think resumes now that have competencies and achievements are more valuable moving into the IT field than the old, what I call obituary resumes, where we used to list everything we've done down on our resume? Nathan, since you've been doing some hiring, what do you think?
Yeah, you bet. Well, I think I know where you stand on the older style of resumes there with that obituary resume term. Um, I, yeah, so I've been looking at resumes about, I don't know, 20 resumes a day for the last week and a bit. We just pushed off a big hiring push here. And what I'm really looking for, especially from people with industry experience, regardless of the industry, is we need people who are able to make an impact. And you can tell me all the technology and all the companies that you've worked at and all the projects that you've done in the past, but that really doesn't tell me what I need to know, which is what was the impact that you made in the role that you played as part of those projects or organizations. And so figuring out how to present some of those metrics and achievements is really key. And I can say, look, this person, they worked in this role, and sure, it was a huge company, but look, they made this kind of impact at a large company. And when I'm hiring for our company, which is a small to medium-sized business, I'm going to say, wow, if they were able to make that much impact at a large company, imagine how much larger the impact will be in somewhat of a smaller business. And so that is the word that really sticks out for me is impact. I'm looking for that. If you're more of a junior candidate, for instance, a new grad, I'm going to be a little bit less kind of keen on the impacts that you've made. But if you can communicate maybe some relevant experience, some interest, and prove you've done your research about the company and the industry, like Scott said, that's going to help you out a lot as well.
How, if someone's writing a cover letter, and I'm just going to jump on to what you just said, how can they show you that they've done research about the company? Because I could look it up and say, oh, you've got this many people. What kind of information is really impactful for me to include, proving that I've researched your company or I understand what your mission is?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. We receive a lot of cover letters that essentially copy and paste our marketing and our branding from our webpage, which proves that you Googled us. But what really helps me out is to hear what you're synthesizing in your own mind about the company, what you think maybe the trajectory of the company is, why you think the company might be a good place for you based on what you've read. And kind of creating your own thoughts around the industry and the company.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to jump into those two questions? One about resumes and the other about cover letters.
I can touch a little bit as well. I think it depends really on which role you're positioning yourself for. So if, for example, you're positioning yourself for a sales role, I would expect to see a resume that demonstrates the fact that you can concisely and in a really pertinent format to your buyer, me, you are able to communicate the value that you're going to bring. Very similarly to what I would expect to do when with our clients. So taking the very complex and making it simple and straightforward to understand. I imagine if you're applying for a position that Scott actually talked about this earlier, if you're applying for a position where you will be a developer, you would expect to see some sort of background or portfolio of development examples. Or maybe it was Nathan who was mentioning this as well earlier. So you want to make sure that, if you're hiring someone to build cabinets for your house, you're going to want to see photos of these cabinets. That is ultimately what you're trying to do. So whether it's the cover letter resume, I really want to be able to see that you understand what it is that I'm asking for. And oddly enough, it is less, I'm looking less, and maybe this comes with such a large, but I'm looking less for your understanding who we are as a company, except for what it is outside of what it is that we're asking you to kind of do. So yes, I want you to understand that this is an ERP, that, you know, you're not, you know, selling buses, but I do want to be just something that is much more focused on the skills and the capabilities that I've asked for inside of that job posting.
So you're looking for individually written resume and cover letter, not the, oh, this is what I send out to everybody.
And in fact, I will focus more time on your resume than I will on the cover letter. So I've actually received applicants that have not included a cover letter, but have included a really resume. And that for me worked even better.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump in here
Scott?
quickly too. Is on the CV resume thing. To me, it makes zero difference what format it comes in. And I, you know, second to my terrible programming skills, my HR skills are even worse. And so, you know, I don't do all the things properly, but that's the world we live in. I look for people who are being authentic, and in their cover letter, are they saying something that's meaningful, or are they just, like Nate said, copying, pasting something from a website? Because that doesn't show much initiative. And I know when you're going through 500 companies and applications, it's a tough thing to do, but that's what I look for on ours. And if it's the old obituary style, or if it's a bit of a narrative, it makes no difference to me, but I'm looking for outcomes. And, you know, what kind of things have you done, and what impact have you made, to use Nathan's word, that we can then translate into what I think we need inside of our company. So those are some of the things. There's not a format, there's not a way, there's nothing specific I ever look for, but it's just trying to read between the lines of what is being presented to see if they might be a good fit culture-wise with what we're doing. And culture is number one, skill set is number two.
Thank you. That's always a tricky thing when people are looking for work, understanding what is the culture of a company. So do you mind just explaining a little bit about culture, what you mean by that?
Well, in our world, we've been a virtual company for 10 years. And so we laugh. We saw the pandemic coming a long time ago, and we got ourselves ready for it. So, but we have people that work all across North America, and then internationally when we're doing customer stuff. And so our screening process, for what it's worth, when we speak about culture on our side of it, is when the resume come in, whatever position we're looking for, is it goes to the direct team lead manager of that department. And then if they feel that the skill sets are good enough, then the next step comes to me as the CEO, and I schedule a 15-minute Zoom call, something where I can see the person, and it's just some very generic questions to see if they're going to be a fit for what I think we want our culture to be. So there's no magic behind it, and this is where I look for the authenticity side of it. If somebody goes on and talks for 5 minutes about our goals and our missions and our values, which we don't even post anywhere, then, you know, that's not somebody that I'm looking for. It's just about the feel, and I go a lot on gut reaction and knowing who our customers are. You know, the way I look at it is our team is first, our customers are second, because if we look after our team, they'll look after our customers. And if they can interact well with our team, or I think they can, then I think they might be able to interact with our customers. And that's the acid test for me. And if that works, then we move on to some more, you know, interviewing question, depending on the level of company or person, and so on from there. But there's no magic, and it's a matter about being authentic. And I say that over and over again, because that's what I say with our team all the time. Just be who you are. You're going to make mistakes. Doesn't matter. You know, likely nobody's going to die because of it. And so most things we can work through. So kind of do your thing, and we always given people enough rope to hang themselves so that they learn and grow, because it's not just about the role they're in, is we always want them to move up so that we can hire new people and expand the team as well. So it's a cyclical thing that we look for when we're doing this, but it's outcomes and authenticity that really engage with me, and that's what gets people past the screen for me.
Thank you. Thank you. May I ask, how do you find your applicants? You know, what avenues do you use? Do you post on the internet? Well, on the internet. Oh my God, how old do I sound? You know, where do you post for jobs? Where do you find people?
I can, start, since we're doing a bunch of hiring right now. Our kind of first round of hiring was through our network. So we basically internally said, if you know anyone who's looking for work for this kind of role, please put them in contact with the hiring manager. After we kind of let that go on for a bit, we did end up hiring several candidates, but we're still looking for more. So we posted on ZipRecruiter. Our LinkedIn page has our job postings. And we're also leveraging our parent company, Payson, to host on their job boards. So we've got a couple different things, but those are in general the places we look, primarily through our network and then also through some of those popular recruiting tools.
We use the good old Indeed.com, which, oh, my dogs are barking in the background, so sorry about that. But we had a host of people come in there, and some we hired directly off there. We did LinkedIn jobs, had 0 interesting candidates come in from that. We do some industry publications where we can go and post in because it's a niche market that we work in, and so there's always people looking. We have resumes that are just randomly sent in to us, which we keep on file if they look interesting. And then it's through the network. It's probably the big one, and that includes all positions, and whether it's local or whether it's international. We just are finishing up a contract with a development group out of Germany through some contacts that we had, and it kind of took 2-3 steps to get to the people that we want. So we'll look everywhere. It doesn't matter to us that where they are. With what's happening with the pandemic, in our recent hiring spree, we wanted to shop local to see if we could bring on some people locally, because we feel that matters. On the development roles that we had, we didn't get the right candidates. So we had a couple from out east that we hired, a couple local as well. So it really depends where it's at. But I like to go kind of the first pass through Calgary and area, just because that's where we are. And then we can kind of expand out from there. But we've not had a magic bullet if we only look at one way or another. It's kind of casting the net wide and then looking for that right candidate.
Okay.
And I will also just chime in and say network is often where we get our best candidates. So as a firm, we actually ask others who would they recommend. We look internally because it is quite important for us to be able to give people different sort of experiences. Then we will also hire externally. So we will post on our website, and then just the usual groupings, everything from LinkedIn to other kind of major HR platforms. I think one of the other things to just keep in mind is if you are a person who's still in school, we do have significant internships as well. So we are for this year, for this round of hiring, but we will be starting to hire again for next year. So here I'm thinking winter 2022, starting kind of in the spring, summer of 2021.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I'll just add one more comment in here, because I'm assuming many of the people on the call here are looking for work. And when it comes to recruitment agencies, headhunters, I don't even write the word to call them anymore, and I apologize if it's the wrong one, but when we get inbound requests from those types of agencies, we just politely decline without even looking at candidates. And so not that it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, but that's just not something that we entertain, because the talent pool we find is already existing and out there. And so just as a word of to the folks on the call, is that may or may not work, and probably for larger organizations, that's probably one of the top tier areas to look at. But for us, we just dismiss it right out of gate, because we haven't need to use the services of those big companies or the people that they're bringing to us potentially as well.
Okay, thank you. So those are really good tips. I appreciate that. Okay, so I have another question. Back to resume and cover letters. The applicant tracking system, it's such a terrible system. Do you have any thoughts about how people can customize their resume to get through? I'm kind of assuming, Scott, you don't use an applicant tracking system because your company is... Yeah. And Nathan, do you use an applicant tracking system?
We do.
Okay.
What's interesting is that because we're posting our postings on various different sites. Not all of them kind of come into the same portal. And so we're checking multiple different sources every day for new applicants. And so once we find a good applicant, we're actually just using good old Microsoft Excel to track those candidates. But it's important to use a system like that so that good candidates don't fall through the cracks, also so that you're efficient internally with all the other hiring managers that are performing any kind of ongoing hiring activities.
Dom, I'm pretty sure you guys use an applicant tracking system.
We do our own, and you know, we figure since we made it, we should probably use it. So yes, we do use our own. If you do speaking with recruiters, it will definitely hit that system. A challenge we get is sometimes we'll get resumes kind of unsolicited, or you know, I'll finish a comment, I'll receive a few resumes, or we'll get some through school intake, through the internship program. So some of those don't always get into there, and that's more on us than it is on the applicant tracking system. The breakdown, as always, in any good process is the people. So in this case, me. So, but yes, absolutely it. But again, the best way to get through and have a really memorable kind of icebreaker to get through the system is personal connection. So that network, I cannot stress enough how good it is. When I get a resume from someone that even if it's through just LinkedIn chatting, someone's actually like gone out of their way and sent me a message and just created that warm kind of almost introduction for their resume, it is so much more impactful than just receiving a resume coming in from nowhere. Yes, maybe attached to a job position, but it really isn't, it doesn't feel like a human being at that point. You just have that piece of paper in front of you and it's just a listing of skills and capabilities. And that's just not quite the same.
Well, we do tend to like to hire people that we know, or people who know other people we know, so that we know that there's a sense of reliability to that person, right? Networking, I think for us, it's such a challenge, and especially now because we can't really meet people for coffee. But certainly I think you gave a very good suggestion about networking, say through LinkedIn, where if they join a group that you are part of, or they follow your company through LinkedIn, and then be able to participate in the conversation that's going on. If there's an article they've read, or somebody said something. So actually making themselves known electronically. Are all three of you real participants on LinkedIn, or do you not have time?
I'll
go ahead, Don. You're nodding your head. Yeah, go ahead. I think we all have a comment on this.
We all are.
Go ahead, Don.
Okay. So I was just going to say, even posting on LinkedIn, I am. So if especially after I've been on like a podcast or a canal like this, I'll actually be actively monitoring my LinkedIn, because at that time, everyone here, you have an amazing first sentence. Hi, I saw you on this webinar. I really liked when you said X. I would love to hear more about this. What a wonderful way to start a discussion.
Yeah, certainly. That is always nice to know that people are listening and comprehending what you're saying, and either agreeing or disagreeing with what you have to say. And it's always interesting to hear that perspective. The other thing that I would say about networking is that earlier in my career, I really wasn't a fan of networking. I thought like I'm always just gonna like be able to find a job because I feel like my skills are marketable, and that is not necessarily always true. That's pretty naive. But now I'm looking back and seeing actually networking is really valuable in my position because of who I can now bring into my organization. And so if I know trustworthy people who I know I've either worked with or been in contact with through various industry or other personal things, I am looking to fill positions And if you're the right person for that position and I already know you, that is way less work than going through resumes and the interview process and all of this. So networking is definitely key. And once you do join an organization, it's a huge advantage. I love it when the engineers on the team say, hey, we're looking for someone. I think so-and-so would be a great fit. And that makes my job like way easier.
Yeah, and on my side, I'm a active LinkedIn stalker, and I look at things all the time and don't participate as much as I should. But I'm more trying to find some information. But I think when people reach out to me on LinkedIn, I respond to everybody. And I think the ones that I like the most, or when people put in the comments or a reason why they would like to connect, or something that piqued their interest, or asking for a specific connection or something like that. And to me, the longer the better. Because it shows that you're actually interested in something and not just scraping for a quick piece of information. So I think it's an extremely valuable tool, and we've used it for business development and for all sorts of different things that have been impactful for us and our business and personally as well. So I'm a big fan.
Excellent. And just so everybody knows, we're not getting kickbacks from LinkedIn. We're just saying it's a really great way to connect with people and learn more about what's happening. So certainly I think when you're finished this, go on your LinkedIn profiles and see what does your profile say about you. And maybe you should be putting in more achievements than just your old role and what you used to do. Okay, I'm very glad as a career coach you guys had that discussion, so thank you. I do have a question here. I have what I believe to be a really strong business idea. I'm a very strong employee and have never considered myself to be an entrepreneur. What questions should I be asking myself and examine to decide if this idea is something I should pursue? I think maybe, Scott, this might fit into you first.
Yeah, my first question back would be, who is the customer that's going to pay you for your brilliant idea? And the sooner you can niche down to who that is and who the decision maker is and who's going to give you that money, then you might have something there. If it's, well, I'm not really sure, it could be this, it could be that, you just need to dig a bit deeper and figure out where you're going to go, because ultimately you're in this to provide a service or a product to a customer. And so the quicker you can dig down into who that customer is and what niche that you're going to be selling it into, then you probably have a good shot of making something work quicker than not. So that's always my biggest thing is there's a million ideas out there, and a lot of people will procrastinate. And I've done this many times over my career as well. Well, I'm going to do this, but I could do this because I know this better. This is easier. This is a bit less uncomfortable. But, to my comment earlier, is go on the offensive and talk to people who would pay for it and find out how much they would pay, what problem you're going to be solving, what it's worth to them. And there's a whole strategy behind that stuff on early stage companies of how to do that, and really spend your time there, not on what do I need for, do I need to raise money? Do I need to have a board of advisors? Do I need to have this? Or what does the business side of it look like? It doesn't matter until you know that you're going to solve a pain for a customer and someone's going to write you a check. And that will be the early focus that I would look at.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add to that? Okay, I actually took a program through the Alberta government, paid for it, through an entrepreneurship with MNP years ago. And so anyone who is looking to perhaps become an entrepreneur, I would investigate the free programs. MNP offers one, and Momentum also offers programs. So check that out, do your research, and maybe they can help you see whether or not it's viable. But you're right.
Yeah.
If you're not going to make money from it, it's just a hobby.
Yeah. And
Okay.
if people are looking for a lifetime or a lifestyle thing to do, that's perfectly fine too. But it's at the end of the day, you probably still need to eat. And so there needs to be some kind of compensation as you go. So can I just add into that MNP type
Yes.
story? Because I had some
Sure.
personal experience with that one. Is way back in 2002. So just after 9/11, one of the companies that I was working with went bankrupt because we ran out of financing because of that event, and the investors pulled their money. And through a couple of people who I had met in that enterprise, one of the individuals we kept in touch with because he's just a very dynamic, fun person to be around. And so he got laid off from his position. He went through the MNP, I'm not even sure what it was called then, the entrepreneurial, unemployment or employment insurance program, whatever it was, came up with a great idea, and engaged a few of us in the community to do that. And, you look back at it now, and it was a simple concept of matching consumers and businesses online and creating a rating system, 5 stars, and allowing people to add comments, right? Well, now you can go on and get that online in 5 minutes if you want to. But back then that was, earth-shattering stuff. And so we were launched in the market in Calgary. We entered an international pitch competition with one of the big venture capitals, Draper Fisher Jurvetson, which is now just banded down in the Valley. And we won $1 million out of that program. And it was all because of the program through MNP here in Calgary, who went through that customer discovery process of what pain are you solving, how are you going to get to revenue, and how can you build a scalable business out of it. So those programs work, and there's a lot of them here in Calgary. Through Platform Calgary is another one to plug them, Startup, and there's a host of others that you can connect through with them that will give you the tools. Many of them are very inexpensive or free, or have some online resources that can really get you started in the right direction, and have advisors who will talk to you about whether your idea might be viable or not. And they have no vested interest one way or the other, so they'll just be honest with you. They won't be mean, but they'll be honest and see if it's something, or point you in a bit of a different direction to get there. So there's an immense amount of resources available here local, and in Alberta, and in Edmonton and other places as well, if you're not local to Calgary. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, entrepreneurship, it's pretty wonderful. As you say, a lifestyle, we all choose different paths. Okay, I have another question. Dom, you referred to the business acumen. So do you think the candidate, when he or she does an interview, should focus on that in terms of what his or her individual contributions and role in the position, or rather talk about his or her technical experience? Where do you think, where do you think the focus should be? Because I pronounced that wrong.
I think it's a great question, and a good interviewer will definitely steer you in the direction that makes sense. Again, if you're going for a very technical position, you will want to focus on the technical side of it. If you are, however, looking at a position more of a sales organization like where I am, the questions I'm going to ask you, I'll actually ask you 3 sets of questions. I'll ask you one, which is the behavioral question, where I make sure that you're not a serial killer, and that you're going to be a good fit with our team, and that we're going to enjoy working together, right? Because it's not only it's not just I'm going to be working with you, you are going to have to work with me. So, it's mutual to make sure that we both actually get along from that perspective. And there will be a series of questions that are really going to start pushing your business acumen. And the ones that are going to really ask you around things like, tell me about any sort of strategic work that you've had to do. Tell me about a project that you've had to lead. Tell me about your experience in this industry. And so I'll actually be looking for stories of where you've proven that kind of business acumen. So long story short, I guess, it depends what kind of interview you're in. But I will certainly not be asking you technical questions, because Scott may have said that he was the worst programmer ever, but I believe that I can fight him for that prize.
Nathan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think during our interview process, we kind of demarcate if this is a technical interview or if it's kind of an interpersonal skills interview. So we'll kind of give the candidate some clues about what to expect, and what kind of mindset they should be in. One thing that I like to do during the interview process is kind of, instead of approaching it as like, I'm asking the questions, you're answering my questions, is let's have a conversation and see if there's some alignment in your goals and also the organization's goals that I'm representing. And if we find strong alignment there, there's probably a good chance that you'd be a good fit at the company, whether the alignment is technical. Of course, culture is king, as Scott mentioned. So there's got to be that alignment. But yeah, I don't believe people are at their best when they're stressed out. And so just approaching it more as a conversation and finding alignment between my goals and your goals is what I try to do.
Thank you.
I'm
Anything
sorry,
to add,
Glenn.
Scott? Yes.
Yeah, no, I don't have too much more to add on that. Go ahead now.
Thank you.
I was just
Dom?
going to say, find out who your interviewer is. So if it's the person on the team that you're going to be on, they're really probably going to be more for a fit from a working together perspective. If they are very technical, they might ask you questions that are more technical because they'll want to understand that you can do the job. If you're speaking with a recruiter, there's a pretty good chance that they not actually understand specifically what kind of work you will be doing. So their questions might end up a little bit all over the place. Help to understand, okay, is this the person I'm going to work with, or is this the person just screening me to make sure that, yes, this person does not appear to be like completely unsuitable for the job.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. When I was researching this area, I came across a report, the 2020 Canada Emerging Job Report through LinkedIn. And they were talking about some job trends. So I thought I'd just like to share, and it kind of reiterates some of the things you said, but they're saying tech is king. So we know that this is an area where there is going to be work in the future. So if you have any inclination, this is one of the areas. And there's data everywhere. And so that data science specifically is an area that's going to have huge growth in the next 5 years. And soft skills are only increasing in value. And we've talked about this, but I think this is an area that I think is really important that we share. So skills like communication, time management, collaboration, they're all really valuable no matter what role you're in. And there's something that people are looking for. There's 3 areas, industry trends they're talking about. So banking is officially undergoing its digital transformation. I used to be a banker in my previous life, way back then. And, you know, that was all about face-to-face, where we didn't have, I was actually one of the first people in Alberta to bring in what we called SRF, which was an online system for information about our clients. There was so much resistance to change. And so my question around this is, how does one deal with change? Do you have suggestions on how people can cope with change in terms of, this is who I was, or this is the box I was in, and now I want to move here? I don't know if that question makes sense, but change is such a huge thing now. Do you have any advice for our job seekers around change?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one to start off with. So,
Thank you.
I think, you know, the overall generalization of tech is growing. I think everyone gets that. And I think it's really about understanding where you might fit with your previous experience into that space and into that sphere. So not everyone's a programmer, but, you know, all projects or all programming needs project management, project development. All software needs sales. All software needs marketing. So those things, I think there's a lot of ways that you can transfer skills into that stuff. So when I look at some of the things that are kind of trending now, fintech is a big one, the financial side of it. Health tech is another big one. Both of those are wide, just like oil and gas is wide, and not everyone is, you know, an expert in every area of oil and gas. So if you look at fintech as an example, with the people that might have a financial background, whether it's banking or accounting or whatever else, there's immense opportunities of those kind of things because they're merging inside of the tech space right now. And maybe you can't program, but you know how to, as Dom mentioned, you know how to go into banks, into mortgage brokers, big organizations, what have you, and talk about what they're doing and translate the solution that a company might have into something that's going to be meaningful. So you don't have to be the most technical person to be in the tech space and still have phenomenal impact. It's leveraging what you know and kind of staying in that swim lane of all the things you can do and how you develop a market, how you develop a product, how you develop a team, how you develop a group. those kind of things. And same thing on the healthcare. I was talking to one group yesterday is, there are some early stage company that they come out of the university, their background is in research, and they've found a niche where they want to go sell stuff. But their biggest issue is we don't understand how to navigate the health system to be able to get to the right meetings with the right people. And they might be junior levels, they might be IT people in the health space, they might be the executives, as Don mentioned too. And if you have some experience in that, you can bring immense value to these early stage companies in the technology space because you know how to communicate. And as I said before, it's the people business, and how can you leverage what you have into some success for whoever it might be and working with somebody into a company. So I think you can get very broad, but at the same time, you have to start there and then really start to look at where you think your skills are and what you can bring value for. And then when it gets into cover letters and resumes and CVs and having those conversations, you can be very, very effective in how you're communicating the value that you can bring in those things.
Thank you. Okay.
I think
Okay.
I'd just like to add maybe to some of the thoughts that Scott mentioned. And you mentioned that one of the harder transitions to make is to become a programmer if you're not a programmer. And I certainly agree. But I think there is still a path there if that's something that you find some of your skills match up with. For instance, if you've been working in Excel, some of those Excel sheets that you've been working in are pretty much programming. And I know that SAIT and various institutions like that offer like coding boot camps where you'll take a couple weeks to a couple months and you'll learn a lot of the programming skills that are in demand. That being said, finding a job after that might be tricky for the first little bit. I think that the first couple of interviews where industry people who are looking for programmers are very used to programmers having a computer science degree or an engineering degree. And so they need to tune, or the industry needs to figure out how to tune the interview process to the types of programmers that are now emerging from these kinds of programs. And where, like, these people, they have skills, and how do those skills fit into our organization? It's just a problem that a lot of the industry hasn't really dealt with at this point. And so it is certainly a harder transition to make, but if you're an engineer, if you're technically minded, if you're dealing with kind of systems thinking, whether that's refinery, an oil and gas refinery, or a drilling process, some of those aptitudes might be a good match for jumping into a programming role.
Thank you.
And from a data science perspective, that's another group where there's actually multiple ways to kind of get at science. So yes, you do need the people who are able to be data scientists. They have statistics. You have the people who have to be able to probe the more complex, if you will, let's say machine learning algorithms with the help of the statisticians. You need people to bring in data and be able to interpret that data and what is it that this algorithm is being trained on. And then you need people who have context to be able to come in. So if you are currently working and you are looking to potentially shift or prepare yourself for a shift in the future, I think finding out if there is an ongoing project that you can bring your skills into that is in a field that you're interested in, whether that be programming, whether that be data science, and basically coming in maybe with a business acumen or data knowledge, and then over time shifting your skills into one of the other more kind of technical positions. I mean, that's a way of kind of building up your resume of that kind of knowledge base, even as maybe you upskill off to the side with some actual technical training as well.
Thank you. I do want to mention, in case job seekers don't know, but through the Calgary Public Library, their digital library, you can take free courses through lynda.com and through Gale, calgarypublic.com. You have to actually go through the Calgary Public Library website, and you can take some programming, software program, just to see whether or not it is something that is of interest to you. And I know that we've had a speaker at an event before who thought he wanted to get into it. He took it and thought, whoa, this is definitely not for me. So that is something I think for you to check out and see, because there's a lot of free learning out there also before you jump into a paid program. Okay, so a question we've got is, how would you do effective networking in a virtual meeting? Hard. I hate virtual. Where's my people?
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do. And I think if you're in some of these events and you can, simultaneously greet people on LinkedIn to see if there's a connection point, or find something on Google that you can try and make a reason to ask a question or make an intro, or hey, we know somebody together or something, that's about as good as I have, because to me they're very, very difficult. But that being said, it's the way that it's going to be for the next year or more. So, that might be a place to spend some time of figuring out a way to get really, really good at that. And that might just be a lot of trial and error to see how you can connect with different people in there. But it's a tough one.
We're all shaking our heads. It's a tough one.
Yeah, certainly.
Nathan?
The only additional thing that I'd add there is turn your camera on if you can during a meeting. I think it will let the other people in the meeting know that you're a person, not just a voice on the internet. And I think that really goes a long way.
I agree. And be aware of what is behind you when you are on the camera. You don't want anything that's too messy or maybe inconvenient. There's really great videos on YouTube that you can see about doing online interviews that can give you some good advice to set the stage. So thank you. Yes, networking is difficult virtually. And here's could you please give some advice to people who transit their career from the oil and gas to the IT sector and study online by themselves? Are your companies open to such types of hirings, example, a junior software developer or a junior QA specialist? Does it make a difference if people are doing their own online studying? Does that help?
I like that because it shows some ability to learn on their own, shows some initiative, and that they're willing to, whether they're working now and looking to make a jump or not working and looking to make a jump, it just shows me that they have some ambition and they can be a self-learner. So all those kind of things are good. And I think I'm sort of made mention to before is we don't play by the traditional rules of HR management and who we need to hire and stuff, because we're a much smaller organization. And so we will look at anybody that we think is going to be a good fit, and we'll make a move based on that, not on, necessarily where they got their education or, how they got it. But we like to see ambition and that people can be flexible and be self-learners.
I think what you're saying is just so important that, as job seekers, sometimes we tend to think of the large companies and we worry about ATS, all of those things, when in fact we need to be able to identify who actually would use my skills. And if it's a small company, you might have to approach it differently in terms of how you present your information. So thank you for bringing that up, because all kinds of companies are hiring, not just the really large companies. Okay, any other? Yes, Dom?
I think it goes back to making sure that your resume and cover letter or that personalized reach out is all meant to the person that would be hiring you. Where you get your skills in a lot of ways is less important than the fact that you have those skills and that you're able to sell the value that you bring. So it's that you're upskilling and how you're doing your upskilling. It's more important to me that I can understand from the way that you reach out to me that you can do the job.
Yeah, I think the other thing there regarding the resume is if you have maybe some periods on your resume where you've been maybe unemployed or previous to jumping to kind of your next position, show me what you've been doing with that time to change. I've received some resumes, and for the last year, there's just no information. So I don't know what that person has been doing with their time. And so are your skills rusty? Are they fresh? I don't know. And it's at the kind of resume review stage, it's too risky for me to invest more time.
Oh, that's a great point. You know, I'm just loving this as a career coach because you're saying everything that we say when we talk to our job seekers. So really, being unemployed for a period of time, a year or so, is quite normal in this day and age. But showing what you're doing, whether you're taking classes, whether you're volunteering, what are you doing to show that you're still connected to learning and community, I think really says a lot about you as an individual. And so when I introduced you, I did make mention deliberately about what you were doing outside of your jobs, because when you're connected to community, you're learning and you're networking at the same time. And I think that has great value. So just as a reminder to job seekers for that. Would like to know more about the current market for QA jobs. Does anybody have a response to that question?
Yeah, there's a market for it in Calgary, an area where I can speak to. But I think and I shouldn't say just, having the ability and the skills to do only QA in an earlier stage company, you probably need to go a little bit wider than that. So if you've been in a large organization and that's been the role, that's perfect. But then make sure you're communicating that you're open to doing other things. What other skill sets do you have that could be transferable into maybe some project management or scrum management or something along the lines, just to make your breadth a little bit wider. But there are certainly jobs available for those types of skills, no question.
Okay. With many tech people working together, is there a role for an administrator in keeping data and communications between everyone?
I would say in a smaller to mid-sized business that I'm working in, we really rely on the individual contributors to manage all of that kind of data flow themselves. For a company that is trying to make revenue, I think the kind of value statement of that kind of role is really tough to justify. And so we kind of push that onto each individual contributor to manage the inter-team communications. I don't know if anyone has any alternative experience.
From a larger organization, I echo that. So, we're quite significant. It's that we've got employees in Canada alone. And when it comes to how is a project organized, we're organized around teams of teams. Almost everyone is an individual contributor. So you actually provide your own specific area of value, which is within your kind of skill set. And then that into this organically formed team that forms around. And so there is no one person that's simply doing project management. We're all for it together.
Yeah, and I think we leverage software tools for that. So Slack or Microsoft Teams or Monday.com, those kind of things, pardon me, are how we manage things on that side of it, so that people have access to information and projects or with teams that they're working on 24/7 at their whenever time that they need. So, but I think, to the admin role, communications, even in a larger company, that there is value to the smaller size organization, because a lot of the people don't have time to do everything. And managing or organizing minute books and legal paperwork and accounting and those kind of things, depending on what you consider to be admin stuff, all those things are still needed. And usually they just get done terribly in earlier stage companies because there's nobody to do them. And that's not where their priority is. So there is opportunities in there, depending on how you term them out. And then even on the communications, if it's the marketing spin or the public relations spin or messaging out or press releases. There's a whole bunch of those things that are still needed as well. Even in smaller organizations, sometimes they just don't deal with them because there's nobody to do it, or they don't know how to do it, or they may use some technologies tools to do it. But the fundamentals are the same. It's just the level of priority and the resource allocation to actually get those things done. So I would say, yeah, if you have some experience in those things and you've probably done more than just the admin title says, you probably have some good value to somebody or a couple of companies that are getting started up that just don't have time or the know how to organize it all.
Thank you. Thank you. With IT and technology growing so much, there's lots that that are going to die or disappear soon. I mean, we know that there's lots of jobs that AI are taking over. And so it's really time to prepare ourselves to what is coming in the future. And what are some of the trends that you see that we should be looking at as job seekers?
Anybody want to go first?
Go for it. If you've got some thoughts.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the whole AI machine learning stuff is coming. I still think it's not to the point where there's some clarity of what that's all going to look like yet. And to be on the bleeding edge of some of that stuff, I think takes a very immense amount of technical expertise. And I'm not sure in a lot of cases, Calgary and area is the place that's going to happen. Now, there are some companies that are doing amazing things on that. There's no question. But the ones that are really leading it are not based in the Calgary area. So if you're willing to work remote or you can work remote, there's going to be a lot of opportunities there. One of the things that I often talk to people about is kind of swim in your lane until you've exhausted all the abilities or all the opportunities there about things that you understand. Because it's when you get into those early stage conversations and the conversational interviews, it's much easier to position yourself really well for something that you have a bit of a background in as opposed to not. So I think, as I mentioned before, fintech is a big one that's coming up right now. There's been a couple of big exits in Calgary around that in the last little while. That's creating some more opportunities there. So there's lots. And I saw some ads on LinkedIn the other day of people looking for fintech executives to come and help them grow those companies. So there's opportunities there. Healthcare is another one in the health tech. This whole COVID thing of online tutoring and ed tech or whatever they're calling it now. There's some great opportunities on there as well. So even coming from oil and gas, because that's where we say the droves are leaving from, there's still a lot of transferable stuff that can come in to some of these areas. And I think there's going to be a few areas that become the leaders over the next couple of years. If I had a crystal ball, I'd be doing it. But there's still, on some of the old traditional stuff, there's still a lot of opportunity there. So don't just go to the shiny object and the moonshot every time. Look at some of the skill sets you have and see if you can transfer them over as well. And I think a big part of this transition to technology is going to be the change management, the people management, and the ability to get things done on a very, macro or micro level with the people that are doing it. So if you have some skills in that, I think it's just a matter of finding the right opportunities rather than finding the one that's going to be the big winner that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think for those who are also thinking about this from like the other side, so I mean, Scott, I think touched on, okay, new opportunities that are kind of coming up. But for those people that are looking at their own job and are saying, oh my gosh, is this job going to vanish underneath me? Or am I upskilling into a job that might vanish in a couple of years? I think we are starting to see, I think the best way to think about what is the impact of automation or what kind of what might automation look like in any one position? I think always cast your mind back to, is this job outsourceable? If the job is easily outsourceable, if you could really imagine anyone, anywhere doing this kind of work with really minimal supervision and really minimal oversight from someone, that's probably a job that in the next while is going to become easier and easier to automate or simply to outsource. So it's not going to be a job that's going to remain in the local economy. So I think that's something to kind of keep in mind, because one of the things we are finding with the work that people are doing is that the jobs themselves are not actually vanishing, but the scope of the work that people are doing is changing. So we're actually finding that the work that people are doing just as a whole is becoming less, right? Because we're asked to bring in more information, we're being asked to synthesize it more. It's also becoming more abstract. So it's not so easy to explain exactly what it is that you are doing. You're being asked to kind of bring up your level of thinking. And actually, that's a cycle that is happening continuously across almost every single job there is out there.
Yeah, I think I can see examples of that in my own career. Early kind of dashboards that we were building for Internet of Things devices were essentially 6 to 10 time series charts of this is what your sensor told you at any point in time. And it was up to the user to understand what this combination of data actually meant. And now we've gotten to the point where the domain knowledge of the people building the software is at a point that we can actually infer different pieces of information about what the sensors are telling us. And so being able to provide kind of the domain knowledge to the technical expertise is really valuable as we build more and more useful software products.
Thank you. Following recent announcements about energy incentives for hydrogen, geothermal, natural gas strategies connected to LNG in Alberta, do you have any insights about tech growth connected to the energy sector?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk about this a lot since I'm working in an energy company as well. I think that global markets are really changing. For example, something that we've seen is the massive rise of solar in really sunny places like California and Hawaii, and it's really a global industry at this point. Actually, now there's so much solar in these locales that you have to turn off your solar panels during the midday because there's just too much energy going to the grid. And so that's provided a whole new set of problems that need to be solved for the utilities, for the individuals connected to the grid. If you have a solar panel, you don't want it to be turned off because you're not generating revenue at that point from that investment. And so as our cities and our society consumes more and more energy, we're going to have alternative ways of buying energy, alternative ways of generating energy, alternative ways of transmitting energy from the generation to the consumption. And our utilities are just going to continue to evolve in order to maintain the stability of the grid. But with kind of the decentralization of the generation, there's going to be a lot of infrastructure, physical infrastructure, and software and IT that is going to need to be created to manage tomorrow's kind of energy problems.
And I don't know a ton about oil and gas because that's not where I lived in. But I think, this perception that oil and gas is this big monster and it's a bad thing is just completely wrong, because there's been so much technology innovation that have come out of those large organizations that the average person just doesn't have any idea. And so if you're inside of those organizations, is there a way to go on the offensive and try and dig in and come up with some projects, put your nose into somewhere where it doesn't belong and see if you can get involved or engaged in some of those projects, and just try and solidify where your spot is going to be down the road. And, that's going to be perhaps learning some new things, learning some new skill sets. And maybe that's some of the, as Nathan has done, you start a company, an internal entrepreneurship organization, and it spins out. There's just so many different opportunities there. And I think those big and large organizations are needing to do something. And I think one of their challenges is that quarter by quarter, they have to deliver results. And so they're, handicapped in some ways about what they can or can't do, but, be part of the solution within those big organizations, not just waiting for the axe to fall and waiting for something bad to happen, because they have so many resources. There's so many brilliant people inside of those organizations. See if you can be a change agent and do some things in there, or engage outside groups to bring them in, or there's a host of things that, potentially could be done as well, but don't just sit and wait.
Oh, I can't hear you, Dom. Sorry. We'll give Dom a chance to get back on. Okay. So maybe one of the last things I'd ask is what kind of groups or organizations should people be looking at to join to learn more about this sector? So I have, for instance, I know there's a sector council, ICTC, and they do a lot of research around information and communication technology. It's a government-funded resource. And that's where I got the statistic that year over year, the growth in this area in Canada has been 11%. So that's an organization I think is valuable for people to go to and read some of the research, as they do research on a monthly basis. So the Sector Council ICTC. Dom, are you back with us? Oh, okay. Technology, we love it. Okay. Maybe I'll jump to Scott. Scott, are there any organizations or groups that you feel would be beneficial for people to explore to learn more about this?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Platform Calgary, I think, is a big one. They're probably becoming the biggest hub of the tech sector in the Calgary area anyways, that kind of swaths every different segment. Startup Calgary is another one. Rainforest Alberta is another one. Intergen is another one. And if you go to a couple of those different websites or do some just Google on entrepreneurship in Calgary or tech startups in Calgary, it'll just give you all sorts of connections where you can research into what areas fit best for what you're looking for. But there's a ton of resources, and the folks that work within those organizations are happy to engage with anybody to have a conversation, make some connections. Calgary Economic Development's another big one that's getting a tech side of things. So reach out and just be proactive. And again, go on the offense and don't wait for something to happen, because there's lots of people that are willing to help and make some connections for you.
Excellent. I just want to remind people, I mentioned about the Calgary Upskill.ca. It's part of the Calgary Economic Development in partnership with ICT, where they have done a study resulting in these are your skills, these are the skills needed for these jobs, how do they match? So that's a good place for you to check. Dom, are you back with us?
Hopefully. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Today's my cursology day, everybody. So I would just, I think, echo Scott. The rainforest was one of that I was going to mention out as well. I think it's just a fantastic to get involved and get connected to the other tech organizations and tech startups that are up and coming.
Okay, thank you. Nathan, any advice?
Yeah, for those of you who are interested in maybe building some technical skills in terms of like programming or other IT areas, there are various programming meetups. There's like a Python meetup group. There's a data science meetup group in Calgary. I'm sure there's a JavaScript or a TypeScript meetup group as well. And so these are great places to kind of check in with other developers. See maybe what projects they're working on, network with those people, talk about what technologies they're interested in and learning about, and also just sharpen your own skills and expose you to kind of cutting edge of the cutting edge of what people are working on these days. So I'd definitely recommend those meetup groups.
Excellent. Thank you. I think that is of great value for job seekers, because sometimes we just don't know what we don't know, right? And so I want to thank you for sharing your information and your expertise with us, because I think it's really helpful to hear from people that are actually in the industry and to give us some tips about what we can do to make ourselves more marketable. I do want to remind the job seekers that we are going to have a poll up in just a moment. And I have given you the answer to the question twice during this webinar, so hopefully you did hear the answer. So it's a ABC kind of question. You just tick which one, put in your name, put in your email address, and we will notify you if you are the winner of the $50 gift certificate. So once again, on the behalf of all the job seekers that are out there that cannot speak to you personally, thank you very much for sharing information that will make it easier for everyone to make a transition. So it is my pleasure to introduce the kind of overseer of this, Chris, and I'll leave it to Chris to share more information. Thanks, Chris.
Sounds good. Thanks very much, Lynn. On behalf of the Board of Directors at the Talent Pool, we wanted to thank everyone for taking part today, which is part 4 of our 6-week webinar series. So thank you all for taking part. First of all, we wanted to end this morning with a few thank yous. First of all, to the panelists, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to provide insights to all of us. Scott, Dominica, Nathan, greatly appreciated. To Lynn Berry, our moderator, thank you again, once again, for doing a great job with this project. To Dan, Brian, Christian, Kathy, and the rest of the technical team over at E3 and Together by Tribe, thank you guys for helping us put all of this together and putting the technical spin on it for us. To Brandon, Elia, Farah, and Ashley, who make these events work, thank you very much for putting on all the time and the effort that you guys do to make sure that they work and are able to help so many people by providing such great information to everybody. To our event partners, Talent Needs for the Evolving Energy Ecosystem, Workforce Strategies International, and the Mature Worker Action Team Project, thank you. And finally, to our event sponsor, the Government of Alberta. Without their support, events like this could not take place. Thank you for willing to take this journey with us and be a partner with us on these types of events. And finally, a great big thanks to all of you for attending today. It's always greatly appreciated that you attend these events and take out time to be here. Thank you very much for being part of it. Finally, a couple of wrap-up points. One, wanted to encourage all of you to follow the Talent Pool on social media. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You'll see all of the links listed on the PowerPoints that are going to start here at the end of the session. And finally, just wanted to remind you about 2 other events that we've got coming up. One is on November the 18th, where we've got a job fair coming up. It's going to be a virtual job fair, so we encourage you all to sign up for it. The link also will be up on your screen in a couple of seconds. And also, too, a pre-sale about some events coming up latter part of January. We're going to be doing 2 dates with some of the leading recruitment companies here in Calgary and in Alberta. And we would encourage everyone to sign up for that. Space is going to be limited, so we do want to encourage everybody to sign up as quickly as possible for it from there. And finally, at the end, I wanted to make sure to remind everybody, we'll see you next Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. on October the 28th, and look forward to number 5 in our 6-week webinar series. Look forward to seeing you then. Have a great day, and we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye now.